Finally, that took. I'm very sorry. Uh, let's see. Let's see what I have to make for. All right, all right, all right. Let's see. I hear myself. That's question number. That took way too long. Jesus Christ. But it's a good day for. Happy Monday. I hope you guys had a good Christmas, good holidays. Have you? Um, Beautiful. I hear myself. Okay, so now I got to get down. I I really don't like wasting time. Um, this is a kind of economic, social, and political forecast for 2022. Um, there's already chaos going on really today, and probably more chaos. But we're just doing this today with down far, and I think what I'll do, instead of giving you all my notes, what I'll do is at the end I will link. Yeah, could even be a PDF, but basically a Google Doc of courses for the information. Um, I'll try to use. Well, anyway, you'll see. But essentially, I'm not going to give you all my notes, but I will give you sources because I respect. I'm speaking to the camera, not the camera. Like camera, I do. Because I'm just that smart. Anyways, let's begin. So the frame of the whole year is basically a viral viral control policy. So essentially, nations are doubling down on it, and every like different state or city has their own sort of standards, jurisdictions, based on vaccinated, the time of day, or geography. They've got all of uh, essentially different regulations. I'm sure you've heard of. There's no way these are nice, but they're doubling down on and show that down on that unfortunate whatever. Uh, Whether or not it was actually statistics, science, all that. It was never always whether or not they do something. They have some interest to it. I'll leave that to you. Side. Right? It is what it is. Um, so essentially, kind of said crisis uh, by 2022. We're not really in 2022. Happy New Year anyway. Um, and they're essentially acting like uh, the only way. That's kind of their pitch. Their pitch is there's these viruses. There's the whole viral theory, or theory that viruses cause disease. It was all right. If you don't know what the viral theory is, it's just the theory that viruses cause disease, because obviously we had to discover viruses, so don't have to come up with the theory that viruses caused it. And so essentially their pitch kind of like, oh, cause, well, there's this problem, so there's some and basically economic regulation and social regulation, and that somehow this will, or not even somehow, like I don't know what exactly they're saying it will do actually. Apparently, this is how there's a problem of virus that viruses uh, cause disease. Um, and so what? So what stats? What stats are you on? This, oh yeah, and the masks. This new mask, which used to be a China, it used to be a thing in China where if you were sick, um, wear a mask because it's basically easier than covering your mouth every time. And it was like, okay. And for them, it was yeah, a way of being polite. You're sick at the time. You would wear a mask, and it was a way of letting people know you were sick, not to touch you. And you know, wouldn't have to cover your mouth. Anyways, so they act like uh, mask legal bureaucracy is going to solve common cold. And this is the pitch, and it's working to a degree. So they're pitching. Um, and yeah, been doing it for about 2 years. And what? There's been for 2021, been regardless, uh, performing most of our regulations, and 20, 70% of these has received at least one vaccine dose, right? So right now we were Surge, right? Leave headlines, Surge, and 70% usually not that herd immunity by vaccine makes perfect sense, but usually about 60% is herd immunity. And this is 70. We're already like that. Um, yeah, and that's well. How about this? So 70% of the U.S. population, 60% of the U.S. population, as of about a month ago, um, was fully vaccinated, right? Um, yeah, the people are actually dying of this, and uh, obviously, I hope it's still an average of 0.6 health. Um, where do these health come from? Well, there's a lot of things I can, but aside from everything but genetics, believe it or not, bad say lifestyle choices they build up as you age, and a lot of the time have been seniors. So what can you do? Florida, no mask and has the lowest cases in the entire country per capita. Don't like looking at that. They like Florida man, and Florida man is hilarious. And isn't it interesting that they have a state that they, their history essentially is you know, from countries, especially Florida. We don't really like those people. They're actually helping. It's not like Pepsi presents the refugees, it's the actual refugees. Anyway, so let's look at Michigan has some pretty tough restrictions, and who's leading months ago. Sure, who is now? It's probably oh, anyway, could be anyone. Um, and they for these basically we're still having breakthroughs. We're still having I don't even really call them breakthroughs. Most people who are still getting viruses back at the you know, if I'm to believe anything of this exists, the virus seems to have learned how to primarily. Um, but health officials continue to claim I'm vaccinated. We're not getting like, um, anyway, so yeah, so they've been restricting the economy and saying virus, virus, virus about it, and might think, well, that's good for quality because the economy wants to stop getting, and the working man doesn't really want to work or something, like something about capitalism, capital money and something. Anyway, I don't know what I can tell you correct is that it's actually screwing up everything about me. Like, oh, it's insane. Um, you can just own any property right now and lie down, and you're getting richer. Um, let alone the rich. That's like so. Um, so essentially, what am I saying? These people have shut down the economy, right? And some of them own company, but companies are propped up on they print out loan for no interest, federal reserve, and so what am I saying? I'm saying that there's a point where they have to start charging interest, and when they start charging interest, then the inflation goes way like it's gonna go hilarious. What am I saying? So believe it or not, this whole like great reset idea, like when you're playing a video game, why do you well you reset when the game is going away that you really don't like, right? The game is going away you really don't like, and the prize that you were gonna get, the reason you playing the first one is no longer. So you reset it. Um, you know, and so what am I saying? I'm saying that they're using this as an excuse to keep things the same. It's not really a reset. Like it's a reset to the same. Um, that's the attempt. The attempt is like, okay, so technology is better now, culture is different. How can we redo like 1948 again? Is it possible? That's what they're trying. And so what am I saying? So they create a lot of inflation and they keep their friends up. And the too big to fails, they stay up um, while people sort of naively kind of on rails going with the system. They don't generally stay up, unfortunately, especially in times like this, because that's what they use these levers, these central regulation levers to do, to basically eliminate. You sincerely see them as economic forces, as organic economic forces, and manipulate those types. Um, yeah, so and people see that. So that's also another problem. People see that there's some insincerity going on in the work market, economics. Like the whole situation is so much imperfect, whatever you want to call it, lack of integrity of trying, creating high risk, um, a feeling of high risk. Let's say for Americans, Americans are actually well protected uh, market. That's why other people invest in our market. And this has created, we're actually not used to this much insincerity. Uh, we've been told that we are, and, you know, and everything we've been told is a lie. And it's like, no, 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 selling that shit out, that crap they give you in exchange, that's the lie. What you were doing was nature, and the reason why other people aren't allowed to do that isn't, it's slavery. But let's continue. Like I said, so the bigs are they're going to stay on top because, at least of the traditional economic system, because they keep printing money and nobody cares that the money is working. They want to be part of what calls itself federal. And also they make it illegal to work on a different system because what? Well, basically the only reason cryptocurrency is legal is because they're not printing it physically. It's illegal to create your own currency. So since Shade's rebellion is its own interesting situation. I think I'll make more than one video today. Oh my goodness. Anyways, all right. So, what's going on now? Well, a couple of months ago, this was like a new thing, right? But right now they're going out. Now, Omicron is this like new thing, but it's not really a new thing. It's really severe. Like, what happens if you get a cold and then you're also tired and achy for like weeks? That's the Omicron. It sucks ass. Anyway, so let's talk. So they come up with Omicron, where they find like, sorry, let me start again. So essentially, what happened was November 26th, 2021, Israel um, this detects claims they have detected um, the new variant, and at the time it was just completely new. We didn't know exactly on basically a traveler from a nation called Malawi. I don't even know, but that's not the point. So what happened? So they just detected the thing, and Israel is a very important, basically, ally towards the Western nation, right? And so they took this um, and they used it for what? Well, they basically freaked out. And like I said, so they're an important Western ally. So it's like when they have a tone, we start following their tone because of economics, because of economics, because nobody wants to be at odds with the guy controlling economics. Um, so what happens? They discover three suspected Omicron cases, um, and they decided to ban all travel from Africa in Israel. You might be wondering why did they ban travel to like America? Sorry, Israel did. And then, right after Israel does that, Belgium detects the same variant about the same day, you know. So it's like this domino effect. Um, Belgium's NATO, well, it's a country in the UN. It's got 11 million people, and it's considered NATO headquarters apparently. Um, anyway, so this affects and NATO is kind of the Western ally, right? So meanwhile in the U.S., that's just so all of this, all of this global stuff, it comes off like the weather in America because they don't really tell us why they're doing the things they're doing and why things are the way they are. So, um, for instance, in America, commercial real estate is um, in certain places, and it's like, well, why is that? Well, let's be straight. The more I think someone will freak out about it, the more you don't want to associate with strangers, basically, right? And what we're noticing, what you notice statistically, is for some reason, at least in America, America has two opposing parties generally. So we're noticing that problems with, uh, let's say, financial real estate, commercial real estate, are only really happening in the quote unquote blue areas. And even the blue people move. There's been a great migration to the uh, southeast generally, a little southeast. And it's like, well, I guess, if the things that aren't doing well in one place are doing, and it's the same people that won't do it in one place who are doing it in another, that must happen. Those people aren't actually worried about the threat that they're being threatened with. They're worried about the people talking, and nobody will talk to those people. Those people are socially threatening enough that literally they'd rather just move miles and miles, and you're free enough in America to do that. Just move to Texas, and you don't have to tell the person, you're using the common cold to be a Nazi. Because that's a scary conversation if everyone agrees with that person, and the TV makes it look like everyone does, like hilariously. Like the TV somehow will make it so like the most obscure theories um, are just some universal understanding everyone has nowadays. Anyway, hilarious. So, so traffic on Black Friday was up compared to last year, but it still was down compared to 2019. So we haven't recovered. There's no way you could recover from this without a scapegoat. I can tell you that right now. Economically, unless you find somebody and go, look, they did this. They're the reason why he did all this stupid shit. No one's going to trust that, court of social opinion again because they know something's fishy. Even the stupidest person knows something's fishy. They might not know everything, might not understand. Of course, no one knows everything. They don't understand. Nobody understands everything, but all because, you know, it's entertaining to tell yourself everyone is stupid. It doesn't mean that they're senseless. Um, and so people are, regardless of whether or not they're afraid of any virus or even social. recompense if they disagree politically, or whether or not they really want that flat screen TV. Um, if it's not worth dealing with people, they're not going to do it. And these people have made it like you don't want to deal with, it, you know. Um, so shame that it is. And if you don't explain these rules, they really won't get it because people are click run. Just there's some cue that they follow and they start running it. Um, and then what happens? So on the 26th, when the idea of Omicron hits the newspapers or what have you, um, the Dow Jones has the biggest one-day drop basically uh, since October 2020. Um, oil drop, the price dropped 13%. Brent oil dropped 11%. Um, fifth consecutive week of losses, which is oil's longest losing streak since last year. Um, not that I care about oil, uh, like I do and I don't. It's a power source. The problem is that just endlessly, arbitrarily, because you happen to have some uh, moral intellectualism about the very real fact of their lives, it's a bit stupid. Um, and statistically, it shows. And I didn't come up with that, because I know I'm not the smartest person on earth. So because I think trying something is stupid, it doesn't for everyone. I'm aware of it, but statistically, it doesn't work. And I don't care how smart you are, you're not going to tell me, oh, the results don't count, the proof isn't real. That's not how that works. So yeah, so governor of York emergency for the Omicron situation, uh, which isn't going to be good for economics either. And anyway, I can just like that on. Okay, so meanwhile, there's the European Union. Um, Same thing happened same day essentially, where their equities, their stocks, basically their equities dropped 3%, same day, 3.7%. Um, and the European Union is already kind of a lot of the countries in there feel extra about stuff. So Italy, for instance, you need a green pass, quote unquote, that restaurants, bars, hotels. So essentially, they know it's a tourist hub, and they are kind of leveraging that. And I guess it's culturally kind of homogenous and, and authoritarian enough for them to pull that off with everything. And who am I to talk? 'Cause I'm in New York City. Um, so in the Netherlands, non-essential businesses have to close by 5 p.m. Whereas bars, restaurants, and nightclubs close at 11. That's their COVID. Like that's how it works. Like COVID doesn't come out at night. That's how that works in the Netherlands. They got a special night, Lysol. The moon is Lysol in the Netherlands. And so we got Portugal. Portugal, very important country in terms of economy. 6% tax, like a lot like Israel. Uh, Spanish is. Anyways, so um, green pass, green pass and a mask for restaurants, bars, you know, and negative testing. And that's a country basically like Panama, historically national, so open, right? Anyways, um, then there's the Czech Republic. Um, there, they have, so there's Lysol there too, but you gotta close by 10 p.m. All right, Czech Republic. Um, in Belgium, the Lysol starts working at 5 p.m. And they restrict, so it's like work 5 days a week. You know, if you work for overtime, you'll get COVID. That's the thing. And if you work past 5 p.m., but before that, it's fine. You know, that's science. That's how Belgium works. And see, in other countries, it's much more like they're completely aware it's not science. The Americans are very naive because American culture is actually quite benign, and so in other places, um, it's kind of like they wouldn't necessarily see the differences in Florida as absurd so much as they're like, well, you know, those are just two people selling two different cons. Why are you so invested in this? Do you believe in me? Well, and sadly, their answer is yes. Anyways, so let's continue. So we got Slovakia. So in Slovakia, the unvaccinated are banned from stores, shopping, public events, etc. Um, and then on the 26th, when they heard about Omicron on the radio or whatever they still got in Slovakia, um, they locked down for 2 weeks. So it's like, okay, imagine being that person that's like, you just take orders, you just put your, and you find out like, oh, next door, they're not anymore. They're not really allowed their livelihood anymore. And you're like, you got to be cold. You're like, okay, fine, must be for the greater good. This is for Slovakia. And then they hear about something on the news. Supposedly, you're the good Slovakian. It's clean, it's healthy, and you hear about something on the news that happened in another country, so you're shutting down for. You sold out your neighbors, sold out your soul, sold out Slovakia, and you're still not. If your neighbor doesn't get to eat, chances are you don't get to eat. And it doesn't mean you have to feed them, but if you're not allowed to eat, I think there may be a problem. Okay, but let's continue. So Latvia. Um, in Latvia, if you're unvaccinated, you're only allowed to leave your home for shopping and work. I'll be honest, that doesn't sound like a regulation anyone could enforce. But you hear how this is just getting worse, and here's this, and how like the places where they agree to the terrible stuff early, they agree to more terrible stuff later. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And then, you'd be like, oh, well, Florida, they're all going to die one of these days. One of these days. Sure they are. I'm sure. And then all their celebrities are falling over from something. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about what's actually killing grandma. We're perfectly willing to agree not to hold grandma's hand while she, and yeah, I'm not with it. Yeah, sorry, sorry. Don't have the moral. Don't have the scientific background. Don't have a legal background. You don't got nothing. You got they're playing poker right now, and you're useful. You're a more useful scapegoat than they would be, apparently, to them, which makes sense because they are them. Anyways, um, so they reported two cases in Britain. Um, then so what? So after the African ban in Israel, Israel just decided to ban foreigners from entering Israel. Not sure if it's still like that, but this is part of why this is why we're going. Let's just ban everyone coming from Africa because Israel are freaking out about this thing in Africa. It's a ban. First they said we'll just ban Africa, and then it started popping by. So everybody else started saying, "Okay, we'll ban Africa," and that's actually how that worked. Um, so. I just kind of wanted. That's actually how this started. Like I want to illustrate for you kind of the clusterfuck of the situation. Where they just need to hear some things, some kind of like, this sort of happened, maybe, a scientist says, you know, and then this one group, oh, okay, screw all that then, we don't have not much interest in there anyway. Oh, in fact, screw everything. And then instead of going, well, everyone makes their own decisions, I guess we'll just have to do our best without, maybe they'll come back in a week. We bend over backwards, everyone bends over backwards, and we screw up even more. And then the people making decisions are trying to impress people to proceed. They don't give a fuck what happens to the neighbor, and the neighbor has no idea what's going on. So he's starving for nothing. So for a show, for a show for foreigners, and it doesn't matter what country you're in. That's like 9 out of 10 of politics. It's like, no, I gotta keep you that way so that the foreigner sees you because you represent us. I can't represent us. It's real odd. And like, it doesn't matter what country you go to, find it. Bunch of things. Um, so yeah, I just told you about that. Told you, well, I don't know if I mentioned it. Italy already requires vaccinated. Austria is kind of like a German Israel, let's say. It's like a little section of Germany that kind of cut off because they're so economic. It's like they're too German for Germany. They're Austria, okay? And they're on their fourth lockdown. So they didn't come out of first or second lockdown with some unity or, nice work. Nice, nice works. Statistically, scientifically, it's been a year. And we have vaccines. We've had vaccines for decades and decades, which at least one of these people have worked for decades. And, my parents got vaccines, immigration, or while immigrating, I should say, that lasted decades and decades, like years, like new vaccine. And it's like, wow, how advanced that you have created this thing that does not do what you say it will and needs to be, refreshed every so often so that it continues to fail. Wow. It's a lot like crack. Anyway, so, and yes, so Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, uh, apparently said, yes, of Israel, yes. But their own Minister of International Relations and Cooperation quoted as saying, this latest round of travel bans is akin to punishing South Africa for its advanced genomic sequencing and the ability to detect variants quicker. And that's a fact. That's a fact. So they created this technology. They're one of the to find the variation that isn't even very dangerous. You know, it's not like it was killing and we found it. No, they just have this looks like a comet. Actually, this, and they were like, oh, we won't do business with you. Like if I anything anything you hyper be hyper self critical, and someone else is like, well, just because you said that, I'm not going to work with you. And that's basically what this entire thing is. Like, of course, there's germs on everything. Like, where have you been? Like, you should look at that, the germ theory, the viral theory, that whole situation. You should look at it again because that's what it says. That's what it always said. You're supposed to have probiotics. You're supposed to have an immune system, a healthy immune system with um, they call it the ay, 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 like homeostasis. If you don't have homeostasis, you're not healthy. And you know what's not gonna give you homeostasis? A whole bunch of artificial outside um, stimulus. Anyways, so these are the projections, my projections, not just mine, but mine as well. Um, Due to the labor shortages, shortage and people working and short buying labor shortages. All right. Basically, due to the whole situation with printing money and lying about everything, acting like they're super responsible for a living. When there's real doctors around, there's real science, trying to produce fucking, getting screwed for telling the truth. So fuck you all. Not for me. No, I'm just some guy. I definitely would prefer it a nicer world. I'm not. I'm not the guy who really fucking. In fact, I own property. My shit's going up. You're not fucking. Um, you're good. So yeah. So this is gonna continue. Um, they're not gonna change based on sense. Like you're going to have to kind of play their game of chicken and play their game of poker, and that's essentially all you can do. And yeah, be polite. Don't stop communicating just because they try to make it impossible because they will make up a story where it is your fault. Um, and yes, but this is not this senselessness is not coming from a good place, and I can accept that. Yeah, and this is going to so the Christmas season is very important for general economics, and the fact that they screwed up to the degree that they did, to the point we have to go, oh, it's up, not as high as it was before when we just dealt with the cold. Normally, we screwed up pretty bad. So the next stop is the response to this. So what's going to happen? That's not the next situation. Social turbulence to. Do with it. So, So let's say, like I just said, so this is all arbitrary, sort of spiteful, sort of not coming from a good place. So every action, there's kind of an action. And that's kind of extra true socially, to the point where it can be rational, right? Like there are people who will argue with you that the sky isn't blue, for instance. If you insist that it is blue in a certain tone, what have you. So obviously, with situations like this, there will still be an equal and opposite reaction socially. Maybe, hopefully, even more so. But what? So, according to Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, 81% of died in from this virus have been vaccinated. Um, this was, he said this in November. Um, and at the time when he said this, 39% of all cases had been vaccinated, 34% of all hospitalizations, and yeah, it's getting pretty bad. I should actually be specific. So, oh no, see, I was specific. I was doing it perfect. 19% in November were actually felony. Um, and I'll show you all the sources. In fact, I'll give you sources. Literally, it'll be done an hour after I'm done. I already have it. I just need to format it. And I'll share it. I'll give you. Yeah, exactly. And in terms of not just November, 61% of the homes. Um, and it's tragic. Um, like I'm saying, so this is really mostly screwing kind of obedient, nine, at least it's screwing the part of them that's obedient and benign. I don't know if they're always. Anyway, so Dr. Roberts also stated that German research indicates that those who got the shots are more susceptible getting COVID, falling ill to other viruses, because the vaccine, as I was just describing, destroys the homeostasis of your natural immune system in general. This isn't even really a vaccine, guys. It's an RNA therapy. Okay, like anti-vaxxer has never met this before, and hopefully never will again. This has been the stupidest thing. I can't believe it. Everyone, and that's why it's still going, because we don't want to confront this. It's like a monster. We're in denial. We're in denial exists. It's like when your mom becomes a zombie or a vampire. What movie was that? Shaun of the Dead? Good movie. Very sad. Um, okay, so there's a Dr. Bergner. He's a physicist. He's a member of the Thuringian State Parliament in Germany. So there's a Thuringian State Parliament in Germany. Um, And he's the guy who came up with that study that actually shows that for whatever reason, and it does make sense, the virus is vaccinated people are more susceptible to the virus. You may be asking, why does that make sense? Because it's an RNA um, therapy. So what does it do? It kind of reprograms your. So let's say that I start deleting all the, and it works to a degree, right? All of them are reprogrammed to a degree, and then I'll have the same for that program, and it'll work on all the computers that previously had separate programs that I would need separate viruses for. You understand? And that's been true with every vaccine since the beginning of ever. That's always been the fact. That's why we were originally um, variants. That's how that worked. That was just basic science. Like that was never a conspiracy. Like I learned that in middle school from a great teacher named Mr. Toribio. I hope he's still alive. That guy was a hard ass, but he was great. Anyways, still no science. Taught me about the scientific. Yeah, great. Anyway, uh, the statisticians that Ruth Bergener was working with found that the states with the lowest percentage of population vaccinated had the lowest excess mortality. Why is that? I wonder. I don't know. I don't know the reason. And that's part of science too. All science is, is witnessing, watching phenomena, and then mentioning when it's repeatable phenomena, and being like, well, when this happens, this happens. You do this, this happens. None of this why shit or maybe this happened, but I was still right because secretly, this is secretly happening visibly. No, if you can't see it, then it doesn't count, and you're not supposed to think you know exactly why everything. It is a system, experimentation, that is it. All of this trying to come up with cosmology, that's religion. And good luck with that, man. Like, good for you. I have a religion. It's great. Anyway, I don't have to come up with a fucking new one every. Um, in contrast, the state with the highest rate, 66% vaccinated, this is in the EU, has the highest rate of excess deaths. So at this point in the European Union, the ratio of deaths to population is literally mirrors the ratio of vaccinated. And most of my family's in the European Union right now. Okay, I'm not happy about this. I'm not like, oh, there's nothing to say. You know, we're fucking goddamn. They're putting out advertisements. Oh, well, kids get strokes too. No, they don't. Never bother me with that ever again. My kid's not gonna get a stroke. I can guarantee it. I can't guarantee it. I can't, you know, hold it against. Go ahead, because I won't be poisoning in my fucking self. Anyways, so the correlation is a plus 0.31, and I'm not a statistics expert. I wish Caesar were here, but has a positive correlation. And they're saying it's astonishingly high. And, maybe I don't know. I'm just astonished in the first place. I'm just astonished that people are looking at this and going, who cares? And the other side is the side that backed down when they were told, oh, what about grandma? At least to a degree. Anyway, whatever. You know, these people, I don't care about grandma. Well, then, just fuck it. Um, yeah, and they're still basically just, even with these studies, even with their own science, telling them really they don't actually care. They're selling a product. Um, but the scientists are coming out and telling them, and people are coming out and telling them, but that doesn't affect the situation. Don't worry so much. Um, yeah, that basically there are people in Europe making up things. So based on the science, they're coming back come up with reasons. Fortunately, so don't expect it to change anything. Basically,
Hear me. I heard me. I got more than one mic. Can't stop me. Don't stop me now. Now I gotta check myself again. And you know, I got a fucking peanut gallery in the back too. Isn't that hilarious? Yeah. Yeah, you still hear me. Damn right. Okay. Hey, peanut gallery. You know I still love you. Um. So yeah. So one of the big things that's pissing people off and making it so like this stuff, at least in America, isn't gonna last very long. At least not as long as it'll last in other places. Unfortunately, um, is that these people, they influence people, and it kind of works, and it doesn't work very well. It doesn't work on everyone, and is kind of giving people a social herd immunity to it. And you're like, what are you talking about? Well, have you noticed that they keep thinking that celebrities and comedians and like sports people keep thinking that we care about their opinions on things that it takes, an education to kind of know about. And so what? So you get a bunch of like even on the subway. I don't know how many. I've heard more, say, celebrities on the subway since this whole lockdown event than I have in my life. Um, and it's because they don't have like professionalism on their side. It's like, here, have a donut. Listen to this guy who plays basketball. Listen to, and and that's not something that you do in a situation that you're taking seriously. Maybe it's a way you treat kids, and the majority of this is not aimed towards children. So, people are tolerant to a degree, but then there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, essentially, at this point, being a celebrity to a lot of average people is actually like they're less likely to trust you, and that's kind of pop culture's like they need that. They need celebrity to work for the modern pop culture to work. That's its premise. That celebrity works. That a star is the one that the camera centers on, and so they basically that's part of why this whole reset thing happened. Like there's a lot of things where it's just like we've proven this doesn't work. Um, it's over. Story's over. Time for something else. Time to move on. And they can't really do that because they're very attached to a certain part of the story where there are classes and there's someone in charge, and there's someone who's basically born into a parental role, and there are people born into child roles, and they're very addicted to that idea of like, well, everything needs to be regulated by the parent force, and yeah, and that's why they call it. You can look it up. It's called postmodernism. Okay, and when they say, "Oh, cultural Marxism," oh, that's not real. Oh, no, they just call it postmodernism. Postmodernism is where the idea, oh, nothing is true, comes from. Everything's just an opinion. Everything's just a perspective. Oh, and they started saying that when they were proven scientifically, objectively wrong. When they were proven, like, literally, specifically wrong, objectively, and everything that they said, like, oh, is just like some, um, you know, propaganda turned out to be real, and the stuff they said was real turned out to be propaganda, they decided, oh, well, we're going to call the high class culture of this age postmodern. Because in order to be high class in this age, you have to ignore modern science, modern history, modern statistics, to even believe in class in this age and be like, oh, well, you know, because, I don't know, look at America. Just look at it. Just try. Anyway, whatever. So, yeah, so you get basketball players telling you, what medicines to take and shit. Um, and then you get doctors telling you things, and they're getting censored. And, doctors getting fired, and nurses and things. Um, and you're not getting both sides, and people are noticing that. And they're noticing that they're getting a sugared up story on one end, and they're not really getting the other side on the other end. Um, yeah, and so they can tell, and that's the thing. So, to the self critical person, it's easy to think, well, am I just intimidated? Or are these people trying to intimidate me? And eventually you figure it out after they do it on purpose a whole bunch of times, right? And you just move. They just move. Like people just move to Florida or Texas. Like, especially the rich ones, right? Like the rich ones that you're trying to oppress, they just got out. Especially the ones who don't care about you, right? Anyways, and you have to remember that initially, and I don't even remember this personally. Like, I have sources. Because to me, this was bullshit from the start. I can't believe anyone let this get this far. Holy shit. Oh my god. But remember when this was like 96% effective, this vaccine? It was 96% effective. And, it was a vaccine. Vaccines work for at least a year or two, like a real one. So it was a 96% effective vaccine at the beginning of this. And yeah, and here we are, and you need boosters, and you can still get it, and you can still spread it. But you're also responsible to try to pressure other people to getting it. But you're not responsible if anyone gets sick. You're responsible that other people get vaccinated. Sickness is no longer like, COVID has won. in the COVID war. That's, now it's versus the unvaccinated. Hmm, that's interesting. He stressed it was also, let's see. So yeah, we're completely up the creek basically, and it's completely obvious that we're up the creek. Um, yeah, and yeah, and the sad thing is that it's those people that just sort of wanted to be normal that submitted themselves to all this crap. And unfortunately, they've already done damage that can't be undone. Like even me, to me, it's still kind of 2020. Because that year just basically didn't fucking happen, right? And we're stuck in this kind of loop, this psychological loop that we just don't want to, accept. And that's going to have its effect on the economy, on culture, where, because you can't just ignore things. The postmodernist wants to believe that it's so mind over matter that you decide what's real. And that's not actually how it works. You don't decide what's real. You face your fears, or you got nothing. Okay, that's mind over matter. If you're so scared you can't accept what's real, your mind is not over matter. Matter is over your mind. Um, and you may notice that they no longer really care. It used to be 96%. Now it doesn't matter. It's just like, oh, we got some people to do it. That means it's okay for everyone. And it's like, no, 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 no. Um, yeah, and a lot of the vaccinated. So what happened? And I remember when people were first taking it, they would report, like, oh, I'm feeling a little sick from this, and that. You know, it makes you woozy, all this, all that. They didn't know they had to do that ever again. They were told, take this and it's all over. You can come back to normal. Which it hurt me hearing that the first time because I knew that was bullshit. And I was like, wow, anyone who believed that, poor, poor soul. But, yeah. So they're caught, in a catch-22 because they want to be against guys like me, you know? Like, who the fuck am I? I don't have any authority. I don't, you know? I definitely have no say in medicine above a doctor, 100%, right? Um, except, in my opinion, except when it comes to my own body, that's just human rights. And that's kind of right. But there's these people, they really believe that they're parental folk and there are child folk. And the parental folk are supposed to take care of the child folk until the day the child folk dies. And they want to see me as child folk. They want to think, oh, this person, the reason why they are the way they are is because they don't deal with hardship. This person is a perpetual child. And ironically, this is kind of like the child fantasy that they live in. That's kind of their teddy bear, right? And these people have had to accept that their Dr. Fauci teddy bear is not just not real, but like kind of a murderer. And they're still caught in like a catch-22 because they don't like the other side. They just don't like them. They don't like, oh, so I'm your equal? Ugh. 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 I liked being the child to the Fauci bear. And it's really weird. But here we are, and they're starting to wake up because they have no fucking choice. Because really, when you take something, maybe you took it twice, and then it makes you sick. And they say, oh, it's going to make you feel better. I know someone that took it, I believe, about 7, 8 months ago now, and they still feel it in their arm. Like they're still in pain. Like, and kind of like, it's not a limp, but it's like a weird thing where their arm is in a different position on one side than the other, and they weren't like that before. Imagine being told to take another one after that. I wonder how many people are like that. So it's like, okay, you might be so socially conservative that when you don't like someone, you're willing to poison yourself or like to show them what's, who's boss or whatever. But how many times, you know, how many times can you be like, well, if I call the culture I don't like socially conservative, that makes me liberal. And I'm going to poison myself to prove it. Not so many times if you value your own life. And quite a few people do. A lot of people do. And so things are kind of, because they have no choice, going to step forward again. Because we've gotten very used to a high standard of living, especially in the West. And they really believed things would never change, or it would never happen here, or if it wasn't a true story, it's not real. You decide what's real. They weren't really trying. We'll do it right where they didn't do it right. They really believed all of this stuff, and they just don't kind of want to accept what they have to change into to stand up for themselves, because they've absorbed this idea that standing up for yourself is immoral. Yeah, and like self-righteous, and that's what they believe. Being social conservative isn't looking down on a culture because they disagree with you and have different tastes, and so you don't want to listen to what they have to say because of how they say it. They don't think that's social conservative. They consider socially conservative being protective of the things you're responsible for, like adulthood, basically. And so they really don't like this idea, like, well, yeah, when a doctor tells you something, you're supposed to listen to what they say and decide if it makes sense to you, and then make your own decision. They don't really like this idea. They like the click and run, click and run, click and run. I'm an animal. I'm part of nature. I'm organic. Click and run. Let's go. Let's do it. And I'd love it if the world were that simple, but it's not. And that's part of why you can't centrally regulate it like that. So my advice is not to attack the illusion too directly, because, like I'm saying, it's not real. Like, they don't really want to do any of this. They want the other side to do something screwed up enough to validate it. Yeah. Because they got no villains. They're their own villain. They're their own enemy. This all came about them calling everyone who disagreed with them a Nazi, and now if I were to apply for a job, papers, please. Because, like I said, to them, being socially conservative is taking care of the things you're responsible for, being protective of it, being suspicious of those you do not know. Whereas to them, being socially liberal is having a culture whose sensibilities and opinions they agree with. Maybe even a party or a nation. So literally, social liberalism for them, and Orwell said it, is literally social conservatism. It's literally state capitalism, they call it. That's what the socialists call socialism. That's how far it went, and how wrong Orwell was proven as a socialist. And at least he admitted it. Everyone else got mad. So now we're going to talk about the inflation. We're finally going to stop talking about things that are totally offensive. So, I don't know, was it the beginning of this year they were saying the inflation was temporary, or going to be temporary? It's not. So So what? Homes are up 13% from last year. Um, Cars are up 50%. So homes are up 13%. Cars are up 50%. Um, so yeah, the median home in sorry, so a home in the U.S. is up 30% since 2011, and the last 13% is in the last year. That's how fast inflation is now. Like, I know I sound crazy, but it's getting real bad, and they're actually shielding you from it visually. So when you finally see it, it's going to be much, much worse than if you just looked at it now. And yeah, and it's the same problem at the beginning, as I said at the beginning, where they keep printing money and giving it to their friends. It devalues the money. So you're working and you're saving, you're doing all this, and it's basically a waste. It's not a waste, but every month it's a waste of like 10%. Anyway, so what? So So why is this inflation happening? It's not just them printing money. It's due to this whole lockdown situation. There's less workers. There's less materials for every step of production. So what? So so for instance, home prices aren't just going up because the value of money is going down. It's okay because who's going to build a home? Who's going to build the parts of the home? Who's going to all this? Um, so while the value of money is going down, the value of work is going up because less people are working. Um, so that's having an effect on everything. Like people like to say things like, okay, who cares about the price of oil? Well, that's how the guy gets to work every day, right? Like that's how everything gets where it's going. So you guys, you didn't care if the barbershop person got to work that day and you told them, oh, you just want to get a haircut. You don't care if grandma dies. Grandma's dead. All right. Like, I don't know what to fucking tell you. It's done. You guys never gave a fuck. And that person was working for grandma. That's that. Like, you're not grandma. Time to shut the fuck up. Anyway, so economists like to say that a household, say rent, should be like 30% of your income, right? So the average American would need an income of like 150,000 to deal with the average rent in the U.S. at this point. Now, we don't all deal with the average rent. Um, I'm just letting you know that that's how it is. And apparently, the median income is about 70,000 in the U.S. right now, which is kind of a shame. Um, and there's childcare. So this is disgusting. So childcare is up 95%, you know, and the problem with this whole situation is that these people aren't gonna have fucking time or money or resources to complain about this shit. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Like anyway, way too empowered, right? You losers, empower your Anyway, your fan base. Sausage. So yeah, so cars are going way up as well. In 2011, it was 30,000 the average car. Now it's 45,000. And yeah, economies are retreating, um, because the only reason they came back to the degree that they are to the degree that they did was because we were told that after a certain situation, after we have this and that, we have a medicine we say worked, we have this and that, we were going to, you know, go back to normal supposedly. Um, and then they started saying the new normal, right? And even that was the implication that they don't know what the new normal is. It's, you know, we'll get there. There's something hidden, but in fact, this is just it. This is it. This is actually, if you had been paying attention, you'd have noticed it was like this the whole time. And they were like, oh, the sea level is gonna be 20 feet up by 2014. Remember, I learned that in college too. That was something they made me watch a whole, documentary by the UN. Like, if you'd been paying attention, you'd realize, yeah, like, they've been wanting to do this the whole time. They're even saying we should have a lockdown, but a climate lockdown. I was like, well, wait, what? And they photoshopped dolphins into the Venice streams so that we would think that like 3 hours after people locked down, dolphins just wanted to swim in the sewage water because people stopped taking shits because of the lockdown, supposedly. That's how stupid, not just they think you are, a lot of people are. So all this stuff that they're doing, and they're like, oh, there's science behind this, and there's literally no science behind this. There's actually science proving the opposite. This is all stuff they wanted to do from the start, and you can look it up. The philosophy. There's Malthusianism. There's like a whole bunch of just like these educated people and their political philosophies. No science behind them. Like the opposite of science. It's basically a religion. It's basically a religion of aristocracy. And thankfully it doesn't work. It's basically masturbatory. But unfortunately, you know, because it doesn't work, a lot of people who don't work like that philosophy. So, you know, they got a team and they can keep up their own illusions with each other, and that's what they do. And our advantage is that that doesn't produce shit. So, so yeah, but the economy is retreating, because it wants to know, you know, people want to know what's the new business atmosphere going to be like. Um, you know, when the rules keep changing, it doesn't feel very secure. Consumer confidence in November plunged to its lowest in 10 years. And again, Americans don't realize, for instance, how good a lot of their products have been for so long. They don't realize, like, for instance, the only reason, like, oh, we make fun of things, like we make fun of, oh, made in China, everything's made in China now. But then they don't want to be America first, support America. But meanwhile, lots of people, every country on earth that was with us, you know, sold out their market to China, their jobs to China, and undocumented migrants. Every single group, including the European Union, you know, like it's what we did. And what we don't realize is that it's not because those people have a higher quality. Those people have a higher quality now because they're working with us, and that's how they tell these people, like, oh, it's actually humanitarian that you're working with these people. Oh, you know, letting, you know, Jose do your work for a couple of cents an hour is actually humanitarian. But no, because if he's only doing that because this and that, because of your standards, you're not actually raising his standards in his home. And meanwhile, you're endorsing his way of being. So you're endorsing, oh, low standards is how the economy is going to work. And meanwhile, we're seeing that, for instance, this whole medical fiasco, we outsourced our medicine, and we're over here like, why is all of this so low quality? Well, you said that doing things high quality was too expensive. You have high quality standards where you live, and that's too expensive. That was too much work. You're still willing to pay a lot for the iPhone, but the kid who makes the iPhone's got to be paid 8 cents an hour, and that's got to be, you know, uh, charity, because it's not capitalism. So, you know, like, exactly. And all this right now, they're waiting. They're like, well, sooner or later, these people have to do something to validate us. And it's like, no, no, we don't, because both sides aren't equal. Um, like, no, people are equal. You chose what side you were on. So what? So the economy is retreating because of these mandates, and it will continue to kind of in proportion to the mandates. Um, it is what it is. The mandates don't just make work more scarce and make money less valuable. Because they make work more scarce, they make actually the goods that are produced more scarce, and they make even raw available goods more scarce by not being able to deliver them. So it compounds in on itself in ways you couldn't centrally regulate if you wanted to. But yeah, so what's good though is that as inflation rises, so will gold, silver, and crypto prices. I should say Bitcoin prices, because not all crypto is worth it. Um, and I should say silver is slightly better than gold, because as soon as the shit cryptos collapse, which hasn't really happened yet, silver is going to jump much more than gold, because for some reason silver is caught up in the crypto market. So like silver went down while crypto went up a little bit, which basically means there's a lot of people invested in silver and also in crypto. Anyway, point is, invest in silver, invest in gold, invest in crypto, a crypto with some valid backing, and I don't mean social backing. I mean objectively. I can make a video about that too. That would be fun. But what? But what? Literally, if you have a company that's actually running and it's as valuable as gold, I just can't advise you on how to fucking do that. It's really a context, it's a contextual thing. Like, if I knew about your company, I could do it. In fact, anyway, later. So now we're gonna get to cars. So if you've been paying attention to the automobile market, you've been noticing that it's been extra screwy lately. And I can tell you exactly why. So the automobile market is maybe the easiest market to illustrate uh, kind of how an entire industry could rely on say bureaucratic corporatism. And why do I say that? Well, it's collapsing right now. And why is it collapsing? Well, it's collapsing because they're so high tech. Um, they don't have the chips that they need to fill up all the cars that they are trying to build this year, right? So meanwhile, every year there's a new program for the new cars. So there are new, basically, parts of the cars being made every year. Um, A lot of them are digital, and then yeah, and then there's the programming itself. So what am I saying? So you buy a car and you spend such and such, right? And then who's going to repair it? If there isn't a standard to all the parts, then one part could be incredibly expensive or hard to come by. Then digitally, if you don't have software to fix the software of your car, what happens when that part, for instance, is also a unique part that's hard to replace? So you end up having digital accessories that aren't basically that don't work after a certain amount of time. You end up with cars that are so well put together, don't get me wrong, that if one single circuit is out of place, the whole thing doesn't work. You know, these cars take a lot of um, basically work. These cars take a lot of work and a lot of, there's a word, infrastructure to take care of. And the average repairman doesn't have that infrastructure. The car salesman doesn't really care if you get to repair your stuff. And meanwhile, the car salesman is already dealing with a situation where he has all the scarcity all on his side because the chips aren't there, and without the chips, they can't create their new advanced cars. So he doesn't even care if you ever get to repair it because he's going to sell it to you for so much. He can sell you a used car for a lot right now. Um, you see, so basically, it's kind of like at a bottleneck, like a huge bottleneck is stupid in the car industry. And I heard someone say recently, like, there should be a legal right to repair. And to be honest with you, if you're gonna have a digital car, like a car that's digital, yeah, you may as well have a digital warranty as well. You know, you may as well have like, well, why would you make this car with this part, for instance, and not ensure that you're going to keep making that part for 5 years or so on, or 10 years, whatever it is. But really, the car's staying power, that's what's screwed up the market. And once again, it is just a problem that they kind of caused on purpose and then we chose to ignore for decades and decades and decades. Like, ever since 1968, they've been making cars with planned obsolescence, cars that are designed to break down in 5 to 10 years. Um, I've had the luxury of driving a Mercedes Benz from 1964, and you know, it still works. It works fine. It works great. It's beautiful. I can guarantee you that if I tried to get something from 1969, it wouldn't be so good. In fact, our cars, right next to that car I drove from the 80s, rusted, destroyed, decrepit, like gone. Mazdas and all these advanced, because it's planned obsolescence, and unfortunately, people haven't been paying a lot of attention to that. People haven't been paying a lot of attention to staying power. Everything's about getting something new and not taking care of what you have, which is really, really stupid. And so now we're in a position where um, one of the things the whole economy relies on, cars, the economy isn't really equipped to deal with that industry for more than, say, another year or so. And what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that they're going to have to make more old-fashioned cars, um, and that's great. That's great for me, because I didn't like all this extra crap in the first place. But like I said, 1964 Mercedes Benz, that was a good experience right there. So yeah, so it's not that the economy is going to collapse in cars. It's that literally because you eventually you're going to care more about the results of your purchase than how people think you look the first day. Um, yeah, they're going to end up making cars with, for instance, the roll down windows again, and cars without the whole um, sensors, all those extra sensors, you know, and that will save on chips, and that'll save on global distribution costs and all of that. And it makes it so when people do rise up for their right to repair or what have you, um, what? It'll be possible. You know, because at this point, right to repair is sort of like a shot in the dark, some fantasy legend. Like, because to do that, you would have to, like, for instance, what would right to repair be? Like, the right to get my phone repaired. My phone gets an update every so often, and because they have to, they know I have to keep using it for me to keep paying my bills. Anyway, that's the only reason it's not planned obsolete quite as much as the car is what I'm trying to say. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that to have a right to repair, the way I heard it explained, you would need a very you basically they would solve the problem that created it in the first place, because the moment they were held responsible for repair, they would make sure that all the cars have a certain standard that they all follow so that they could easily repair them every time, and make sure that all the software gets the right updates and all this and all that. And that's where the right to repair thing comes from. It doesn't even come from they're not going to repair a goddamn thing. The moment it's their job to repair it, all of a sudden it won't break down quite so much. Guaranteed. Um, because that's where it came from. It's not like they don't have the technology. They had the technology in 1964. Ford, I can show you cars that Ford had, electric cars, plug-in electric cars from, I think it was the 40s. Um, yeah, so enjoy. Yeah. And people are starting to notice that sophistication is simplicity, and that's good because that's going to, um, well, basically, what? Well, I'm not even done yet. So now we're getting to refugees. Everyone's favorite subject, refugees. Mm. Oh, I wonder if he's watching this. There's a couple of people that might be watching this. Anyway, and they're actual. Well, anyway, I won't even ask. I won't even say because it's not. It's not mine to say. It's not mine to say. So, so you know, the global economy is kind of screwed because nobody wants to make contact with people, and the international regulatory people are treating a lot of these developing countries like they're extra viral or extra dirty or what have you, and so that kind of screws up the local business. So the refugee issue, not that America thinks of it that way. To the rest of the world, it's a refugee issue, and in America they say illegal immigration. But that's because in Europe, anyway, basically it's just semantics. Okay. Basically, 9 out of 10 of these people is it's a financial migrant. They want better work and they want higher standards. Um, and for whatever reason, it is more in their interest to come without basically undocumented, quote unquote. That's it. And that's why when one group calls them refugees, it makes me go ha, um, because it's like no, most of those people know. Like I've worked with those people, great people, nice people, a lot of them, but that doesn't mean that they come from some horrible, war zone. They they won't pretend it's the perfect spot either. It's just like, yeah, I came here for work. It's like I respect that. My family moved where they moved for work too. That's how that works. So so apparently 84 million people have been impacted by these regulations globally. With 1.3 and our oh yeah, and displace them. Of course, there's more than 84 million affected. So basically, these migrants, 84 million economic migrants slash refugees, or economic refugees, whatever you want to call them. 1.3 in the million in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Um, 1.2 million in Ethiopia, which, see, that's just it. So Ethiopia actually has a war going on, or it has for a year, just for a year, not for as long as the refugee crisis, but that just gets lost in here or there. Um, yeah, and then it's like, okay, like if something happened in New York and I needed some refuge, I would go to a neighboring state, wouldn't I? Anyway, um, so this year, Afghanistan and Myanmar has 4.4 million refugees seeking refuge. Um, exactly, and it's just getting worse because the world wasn't perfect before. Before we were making up our own problems, there were people with real problems that aren't in the first world. Um, and it just got like multitudes worse for them. Like multitude, like you can't describe. So there you go. Um, and unfortunately, because what they're doing isn't really going to solve the problem, like any more than if I had moved to, say, Texas or Florida, it would have solved this problem. It wouldn't solve anything, right? This isn't going to solve the problem. So what's going to happen instead is that people are going to become, unfortunately, more anti-immigrant and anti-establishment, because the establishment won't let them work and will import people or export their work to make their work cheaper, and then tell somebody, oh, you know why you can't work? Because you're not following the rules. And then specifically pick people who avoid following the rules, you know. Um, so the average person has a logical mind, They're not always logical, but it's there, it's in there. That's how they survive. And this is happening all over the world, you know, like I said. Anyway, when you actually talk to the refugees, it's super refreshing. Let's just say that. So Britain's actually the one having the biggest problem with the refugees. And the reason is because Britain doesn't have a national ID card. I guess because there's different nations inside Britain. So, and I guess they're that ethnically kind of conflicted. And that does sound like Britain. If you look at how the how the English and the Irish, like, engage with one another, it's interesting as an American. Anyway, let's say that. So apparently, more than 30,000 migrants tried to cross the British Channel this year. Most of them from Africa and the Middle East, which makes you think, how did they, they would have to cross in France. So that means that there's like that's why I'm saying refugee really, because if I'm coming from, say I'm in Ethiopia, there's some civil war going on in Ethiopia, okay, and then I go north from Ethiopia, I reach that African country, and I say, hey, these people don't seem like they have the resources to take care of me, okay, so I'd have to pass all these countries. Once I'm in France, once I'm in Italy, once any country that's got the resources to take care of me, I'm done. I'm not window shopping because I'm a refugee. And really, all I want to do is get back on my feet and then find a way to get back home. That's a refugee thing. Even an economic migrant is just doing that in real life. He's just trying to get on his feet and either create a home or bring wealth back home. You know, like these aren't migrating animals. Like, like people are so fucking stupid. Anyway, so recently at least 27 people drowned crossing. At least 17 men, 7 women, and 3 children. So that's instead of documenting all these people, they're drowning, and that's disgusting. Um, 2 survivors are being treated for severe hypothermia in France. So it's just hypothermia when you're a migrant. Isn't that interesting? Because if you said they had COVID and you reported that, oh, migrants are coming in with, the undocumented migrants are coming in with COVID, then the non-hypocritical thing to do would be to finally stop that, right? Make sure they were all documented. That would be, that would have already been the not hypocritical thing to do. But if you think there's some moral reason behind, the bigotry of low expectations that these people apply to everyone they claim they're not racist against, but we know. Anyway, this once again proves like they don't care. They're like, everyone's racist. Like, no, not everyone is like. No. Anyway, so RTL supported 2 survivors. Okay. What is exactly. So in France, they've got people coming from Iraq and Somalia and Ethiopia and all these different places. They're coming to France like it's a big, like it's an airport, like it's a bridge to the UK. And you have to understand that if this was a real refugee type issue where there was one or multiple situations and that people in a position of fight or flight had to make rough decisions, they wouldn't all be funneling into the UK like this, like it's a system. That there must be an international industry of this, a human trafficking industry, one might say. Anyways, because it's not as though these people, like, it's not as though you couldn't just document it. If there's a moral reason behind it, like we were already doing that. Anyway, so 166 migrants vanished in the English Channel this year, at least. 1,600 have died in the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah. So they basically, there's a culture, there's an industry, there's something going on where they just have a steady stream of rafts where thousands are dying a year and no one's doing shit about it. We call them refugees, and the worst shit that happens to most of these people in their lives is they drown in the ocean or in the sea trying to fucking do what these stupid globalist assholes tell them is in their best interest while their country's being fucked behind them. Like mine. Like yours. No, no, no. They're refugees, but when they're in the water, then they're going towards success and freedom, right? Like you were sick before, but now that you got that thing, now you're healthy, right? Like we're all on the same side here. Let's just try to do things that are healthy and work, you know? Um, I don't know. The deaths have led to finger pointing between the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and French President Emmanuel Macron. That's hilarious, and I don't care. Boris is a disappointment. Macron is exactly what you expect, and also a disappointment. Um, yeah, and Johnson's blaming France, even though you know the moment there's a rule where the moment they touch the soil, they have to accept them, but they're not going to change that rule. Like basically, these people are being paid off. It's like if I was a janitor and then the floor I'm supposed to clean is dirty, it gets dirtier every day. And then when you start pointing it out, I go, oh, it's not my fault. The janitor next door is so dirty and he's getting dirt on me. And he really is dirty. And then he says the same thing about me. And for some reason, both our bosses are stupid enough to believe us. That's basically all politics is, except in America, because in America they know that that's not true. Like we know that we're the strongest military on earth, and nobody can really force us to do anything. So in America, they just tell you that all your kind of native sensibilities are actually harmful and toxic and evil, and that your standards, which are basically the highest standards of living on Earth, are actually toxic, and no one should have them, and that you should be more like you should have lower standards. You're actually really arrogant, and less people should be like you. There should be less of you and more people with lower standard. That's how they treat Americans. Like, why don't you act poorer? Just do it. Just do it and see what happens. that's that's the American pop culture for the last 30 years at least. Um, it's magnificent. It's like wow, like as, and I wouldn't have noticed it if I didn't speak to people from other countries, because trying to explain it to them is fucking impossible because it makes no fucking sense. Like, why are you listening to this person who cannot speak English but is from your country? Well, we think he's cool. Why? Well, he tries to act like generationally poor people. Do generationally poor people even try to act like generationally poor people? No. No, they don't. And you kind of have that realization like, oh, this person isn't spoiled. This person actually has to fight for their social mobility. Holy fuck. My entire country is spoiled. Holy fuck. Even the poorest people in my country are spoiled. Holy shit. And it's mind blowing, I swear. Anyways, and these people are pointing fingers because they can get away with that. Like none of this stuff matters. This is just the law. You just live and die off this. It don't matter. They're writing letters about each other. It's very important. That's why I'm glad I don't live in Europe. Yeah, write a letter about this. Intern. Okay. Yeah. So So the leader of Belarus, Lukashenko, has been accused of basically using the migrants as a weapon. Um, Yeah, and Lukashenko is basically Russia's, let's say, puppet. Not puppet. Uh, Little ally, let's say. So what? So people are. It's basically useful to be able to be like, oh, we're not allowing this to happen. Someone's helping us allow this to happen. Oh. And it also, this kind of is an opening. So they're blaming Lukashenko or whatever. And it's basically because what? Because he doesn't want to accept them, these migrants. So they're blaming him for them accepting them. And yeah, and he's just sending them straight to Poland, which I think is hilarious because Poland's accepting them. Anyway, that's not the point. My point is that this is kind of a way for them to be like, oh, the whole thing was really Russia's doing, even though the entire point of calling them refugees was because war on terror, right? And remember, Obama went into Africa. Remember, Coney, we're going to save the world, stop Coney, all this. That's what caused the refugee crisis in Europe, for instance. The whole like that's why. Anyway, I've been offensive enough, eh? Uh, but yeah, let's just say that we definitely caused the crisis, which allowed us to call this a refugee crisis, and not just undocumented migration, illegal immigration, whatever you want to call it. And so we just kind of make excuses for all this stuff, right? Like how did all this stuff? So what? So now they have an excuse to blame Russia on the migration crisis. I mean, blame the migration crisis on Russia. So, and they're already screwing up the whole economy. And this sort of thing actually already happened historically about 100 years ago, where like people were sort of waking up, and then World War started. Okay, all right, and these like none of the things I'm talking about, sociology or political science, all this is hundreds of years old. Like most of the crap I've learned from is at least 100 years old. Like the only guy I read that isn't 100 years old is Orwell. Okay, none of these people are doing this by mistake. They're not like, oh, and we're gonna cause a refugee crisis, and this is gonna make people love foreign cultures, or oh, this medicine is going to work. Because if you read their philosophies, their whole thing is about an in group that follows orders to a T and considers outsiders suspicious, and having a lower population so you can maintain a group cohesion. It was never about saving lives or making you happy at all. Ever. To the point where they found out it was scientifically more profitable to make you happy, and they disqualified science. Like they found out that you could make more money just, you know, working sincerely. And it's like, nah, because then there is no lower class than me. And we're right there, where they have to start a world war and start a new NATO or whatever. And that's part of my, that's one of my projections, that they're going to allow the things that are happening right now to spiral into a global conflict. And that this right now is already them passive aggressively having a global conflict, where China clearly started this. And you remember when they were showing us videos of people falling down in the street, like having seizures, like COVID gives you epilepsy? That never happened, did it? And we're not pretending like, oh, where's the, no. Nobody's even under the impression that nothing. Like, there was no way that the original reports about this were valid even remotely at all. It's impossible to make that statement, but with evidence, basically. And we're right here, like nothing like that never happened. Like the opposite is true. Like it's so valid. And yeah, so now we're at homelessness. We're halfway through, guys. We're halfway through. In fact, what's after this? Yeah, I'm gonna do homelessness, and I'm gonna come back a couple of minutes, and we're gonna finish it because I'm only halfway through. Isn't that hilarious? Um, so in 2019, for instance, New York City spent 3.2 billion dollars to house 60,000 people. Um, that's 53,000 people. No, sorry, it's $53,000 per shelter. Okay, so what am I saying? Yeah, well, per shelter for a person. So they basically are spending. So how much is that? Is divided by 12? Anyway, it's sort of like if someone's rent plus utilities was like, I don't know, 20,000 because they're homeless, and that's how much the tax costs. So and you'll hear me railing a lot about how these regulations don't work, and maybe you think I'm just repeating some canned thing that I heard from like some teacher somewhere. I will repeat again. So in New York City, this isn't a new place filled with idiots. This is a place that should be run by experts, some cutthroats, all right, some economic guys. They used 3.2 billion in 2019 to house 60,000 people. And when you divide 3.2 billion by 60,000, it comes to 53,000, which means they spent 53,000 on each homeless person that year in New York City. Now, anyway, you understand what I'm saying. So there's no way that this money, it's not even that the money isn't going anywhere. Who knows where it's going? It's just, this is definitely a waste, and nobody does anything about it. Nobody cares. Even the poor people aren't complaining because they're getting enough. Nobody, it's just that the system itself is so corrupt that it makes poor people and then uses them as a validation for the people who made the poor people in the first place to get free money. Okay? And that's just statistic fact. Whether or not these people are sincere or insincere, I don't really give a damn. I don't know if someone's sincere or insincere anytime I give them $1 for any reason. I never have. That's never been something that reality could give me. So here's another thing. So the homeless shelters, and if you've ever spoken with homeless people, they'll tell you, are actually dangerous. If they're not physically dangerous to the person, they're often, it's easy to basically have your property stolen. So a lot of people, homeless or not, don't want to be taken to a shelter. So yeah, and this whole, obviously this COVID situation has made these things worse. In California, they have towns, like tent towns, like in They Live. Like They Live is just California right now. Like literally. To the point where if you take the makeup off those people's faces. Anyway. So apparently, in November, they recently found a corrupt um, administration. So this shelter was given 10 million. It's run by a group called Millennium Care, and they stole over 2 million. And yeah, they basically just used it for themselves, for funsies, for cars and clothes and crap. Um, so why do I bring this up? Why bring up the homeless? And why bring up the refugees? Well, because there's an answer to this, and the answer is self-sustainability. Um, and that's going to be the answer in 2022, because it's not about me being right or wrong. It's about, well, if this is the only thing that works, then yeah, the turtle that can live 2 years, that's going to be the turtle that's alive in 1 year. When I come back to the tank, let's say. It, it doesn't mean everyone else has to pick the same turtle as I do, but if I know that's the only turtle that can live longer than a year, it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. And so what? So these people are taking advantage of the fact that nobody wants to take any care of anything, nobody wants to be responsible, and so irresponsibility is really popular right now, and only the responsible will survive. And that's self-sustainability. Um, I did hear someone say to check out the economic model for Boys Town, Nebraska, because believe it or not, the people that are pointing out the corruption of these groups is because they care about poor people, and they know that, of course, doesn't it's not like 53,000 a year for housing, like for the homeless. Like if you, Jesus Christ. Anyway, what do they need? Police protection as well? Like are they running from the mob? Like what's going on? Like, yo, my living standards are nothing. If I was homeless, I'd live off. That would just be my shelter. Like Jesus, like get out. Um, so yeah, so people are becoming really kind of aware and skeptical, and the thing that we're going to have to do is actually be responsible with our money and with our decision making. Um, yeah. So, yeah, I basically only put that in there to illustrate how bad they screw with the whole charity situation. Like, they talk about, like, private charities, and private charities, you know, there's a bunch of them that are pretty screwed up. A bunch of them, like, oh, we'll give 1% to charity, and, 10% to our employees and 90% to, the CEO or whatever. Like, yeah, it's pretty fucked up, right? That that has to go on record. Like, that goes in all their taxes. They would need to bribe the government guy to lie to him, the inspector. They are under the inspector, so all that corruption, and it is corruption, I agree with you. It's it can't even exist without these guys, these regulator guys. Meanwhile, you check out what these regulator guys do on record, and it's like, so supposedly, according to you, this costs this much to do this, and you still need more. And these people seem to be getting generationally more poor. Like, if I look before, there was like a federal house the poor division. The poor were doing better. And then you check the like public education. It's like, wait, so we had a higher public literacy rate in America before this, and you start looking, wait, before the income tax, the street looked better and there was less poor. And it's like, wait, what do we do all this for? Like, why is it? Because once you let go of the idea that the only reason people are civilized at all is because of some central regulatory system, it's like, oh, so this has been like the most uncivilized thing like ever. Like, this is useful for war and nothing. War and nothing. And we're starting to notice that. So you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna start a fucking war. Anyways, so I have finished with this portion. I have 5 more little sections to go through. Which sections have I gone through? I went through the homelessness section. I went through the refugee section. I went through the cars section. I went through inflation. I went through social backlash to COVID, and I went through the basic COVID stuff. So what is left? What is left is there's a worker empowerment section. There's the AI VR technologies section. I'm not going to spoil it for you. You must watch. You must watch, and or I will kill you. And you're not allowed to know until after you watch. Thank you. What's left? There's the globalism. Yeah, the end of globalism section, kind of. It's not really the end of globalism section. You can't really end globalism. And then there's the state of cryptos section. And I'm so tempted to spoil this, but I'm the only one who cares. So I'm safe. I'm going to have some more coffee and smoke a cigarette. I guess I'll be back in 15 minutes. See you.